Hey, friends! Just so you know, we enjoy the swear word and we rely on good old fashioned humor to get through some seriously dark subject matter. At no time do we intend any disrespect toward the victims or families of the victims in the cases we cover. Also, be sure to listen to the end for a few palate cleansing bloopers to reset your mindset. And with that, we thank you for listening and we hope you enjoy. Hey, friends! Welcome to Crime Will Tell. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Jamie.
Today, we're discussing a case that occurred in 1979. And while I don't have any brothers babble this go round, this case was suggested by brother's sister in law. So, family tree time.
Okay.
Brother is married to his wife, obviously, and my sister in law. Okay.
Okay.
Her brother is married to a woman named Missy. This makes Missy my brother's sister in law.
Correct. Okay. Got it.
Missy's brother in law, Keith. So one of Missy's sisters is married to a guy named Keith. Keith went to the high school that is at the center of this case that we're
Okay.
going to work our way through. And he knew all the major players in real
Oh,
life.
shit.
Yeah. So thank you,
What?
Missy, for suggesting this case. And you picked a good one. So I am joined by my good friend Bourbon,
Ooh, what you drinking?
Hazel Bay Aidenay,
Okay.
not only because bourbon is my absolute fucking fave, but it's also strong enough to pair with this case because this case is a fucking doozy.
Ooh. Okay.
What do you have? What do you have?
I'm drinking some Knob Creek bourbon.
All right, Knob Creek. Well,
Mm-hmm. Or Knob if you fancy.
cheers.
Cheers to you, my friend.
Clink.
Clink. Mm-mm-mm.
So, like I said, oof, this case. So, this is going to be a two-parter.
Okay.
It's not too bad. There is so much to this story. There are so many details, so many threads. This one does require a little bit of attention. So I'm just doing, I mean, that's a trigger warning in and of itself, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
got to pay attention to this one or you could get lost. Looking at you, LP. I'll do my best to keep things straight. I'm also unintentionally sticking with the whole school teacher in Pennsylvania theme.
Jesus Christ.
I know.
I'm
I
just
don't know
kidding.
why I do this. Episode 29, which was on Joanne Chambers and Paula Naraki, they were also school teachers in Pennsylvania.
If one of them puts a body in a suitcase, I'm gonna lose my goddamn mind.
And then takes a taxi.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, no, we don't have any of that.
Okay.
But anyways, in this case today, though, the police did eventually solve it.
Oh.
Well, part of it.
Ooh. Okay.
The other part has never been technically solved. And to this day, it actually remains an active but cold case.
Okay.
This is the very tragic case of Susan Reinert, Karen Reinert, and Michael Reinert. The phone call came into police dispatch in the early morning hours of Monday, June 25th, 1979. It was a male's voice. While I did find one source that suggested the caller actually gave a name, several other sources reported that the caller had actually remained anonymous. But whatever the case, what he had to say was incredibly important and helpful to an investigation that hadn't started yet and would not realize for some time the complicated web it would work through in the coming years.
Ooh. Okay.
The voice told the dispatcher that he thought he saw a woman that looked like she might be sick in her car in a motel parking lot and that he just wanted to call to let them know that they might check. They might want to check that out.
Okay.
Now, a few hours earlier that same morning, completely independent of this anonymous tipster phone call, a Swatara Township police officer was patrolling his assigned area like he always did. Very routine, nothing out of the ordinary. He rolled through the Host Inn Motel's parking lot and noticed an orangish reddish hatchback car that appeared to have its hatchback opened a bit that was parked in this parking lot.
Hmm.
The officer was like, yeah, this doesn't look right. So he ran the license plate number, and the car came back registered to a Susan Reinert of Ardmore, Pennsylvania, Nope, that's not how Pennsylvania is pronounced. Ardmore, Pennsylvania, roughly 100 miles or 160 kilometers away.
Okay.
So she lived several hours away,
Right, yeah.
but her car was in this parking lot.
Huh.
So the officer walked into the motel's lobby to see if a Susan Reiner was a registered guest there, and he learned from the hotel lobby's clerk, nope, there's no Susan Reiner registered here. And as he was walking back out to the parking lot towards the car, he was going to start to inspect it. He grabbed for his radio to report his findings. Hey, dispatch, I found this weird fucking car. I'm going to
Mhm.
check it out. But before he was able to do that, his radio crackled and he received an alert of a fatal car accident that had just occurred in that area.
Oh,
So
shit.
off he went immediately to respond to the fatal car accident.
Whew.
And he didn't have a chance to fully check out the car or radio dispatch with his findings.
Mm.
When the mysterious man that provided his anonymous tip to dispatch, when that man called, the same officer that had noticed the hatchback earlier responded back to the motel after handling the car accident. Because the car accident happened before, then the call came in and they dispatched this same officer. And I imagine he probably had a pit in his stomach because he was already there before and he already knew that whatever was going on with this orangish reddish car, it didn't look right. And so he had good reason to have a pit in his stomach because what he found was pretty jolting.
Mm.
Yeah, I can see by the look on your face that you're anticipating.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
assuming it wasn't an old sandwich.
it wasn't an old sandwich.
Okay.
When he fully opened the hatchback, he discovered the nude, bound body of a female. She was in the fetal position with her hands tied behind her back, and she had chains still wrapped all around her body.
Holy shit.
She had abrasions all over her forearms, ankles, knees, even the back of her neck. She also had notable bruises everywhere, like her forearms, her up, like all over her back. Her butt was just completely black and blue.
Damn.
She had two black eyes and blood that had dried in and around her nose and mouth. It was very obvious that she had been severely beaten.
Yeah.
And it looked like just from her, like some defensive injuries that she had valiantly struggled against her attacker or attackers for her life.
Mm.
Jack Holtz was one of the authorities who responded to the scene and was charged with starting and leading an investigation of what was clearly a homicide.
Right, yeah.
When the car was thoroughly searched and analyzed, Holtz learned that no clothing, purse, or keys were found with the woman or anywhere inside the car or outside the around on the ground by the car. They would learn, just as an aside, she wore glasses and she had pretty terrible eyesight. So she wore glasses constantly, and her eyeglasses were not found anywhere either. So
Okay.
her personal effects were not there. The car itself seemed to have been wiped down, specifically the inside driver's side and most of the exterior. So clearly, somebody was trying to get rid of evidence, fingerprints, whatever. The inside of the car itself, it wasn't clean, but it wasn't dirty. Like it wasn't filthy. It was messy. Like the owner was someone who had like a busy life. There were random items that included some children's stuffed animals. There were a couple of pamphlets. One was for the Cub Scouts, one was for a church. There were empty food containers and wrappers, a map. Remember back in the days when you had to get somewhere using a map?
Mhm.
A
Gross.
hairbrush, a girl's barrette, things like that. Nothing suspicious or alarming, with the exception of one item, a comb that was found under the woman's body that had an inscription that read 79th US ARCOM, which stood for United States Army Reserves Command.
Okay.
The last thing police found, tucked up into the springs underneath the driver's side seat, was a dildo.
Oh.
Authorities again confirmed that the car was indeed registered to a woman by the name of Susan Reinert, who lived in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. And so, while certainly identification of the body and an autopsy of the body needed to take place, investigators were wondering, like, oh my God, is this Susan Reinert? Like, this is the
Mm.
car's registered to her. Could this woman be her? Aside from a dead body in the hatchback and that comb, very unique specific comb found under the body, the obvious lack of fingerprints, and the dildo, of course. The only other eyebrow raising thing was that the hatchback had been left open. So the car had been parked in this motel parking lot and the hatchback was just, it was open.
Right.
Anybody walking by could have seen her body in this hatchback.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
weird.
police were like, okay, well, clearly whoever did this wanted us to find her
Mhm.
because also we've got this anonymous tipster that phoned into the police dispatch. And so investigators were beginning to think like maybe that person who called in the tip was the killer, or maybe somehow, some way otherwise involved and wanted authorities to find the body at a certain time. Like it just
Right.
seemed very planted. I have a fun fact. It's a small rabbit's hole, but brother told me that Pennsylvania is not called the state of Pennsylvania. It's called the state of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Did you know that?
I think actually, like I think that I've seen it written out like that, that it's like, "Oh, calm down, Pennsylvania."
Well, I didn't know that. And just because my brother's like uber smart, whatever, I looked it up because I was like, no, it's not. It is. To be a commonwealth means to be an organized political community. I would argue all 50 states are an organized political community, but what do
Eh,
I know?
some are more loosely organized, let's be
Yeah.
real.
There are actually 4 states in the United States that are known as the state of the Commonwealth of.
Virginia? Is Virginia one?
Yes.
Okay.
Pennsylvania, Virginia. Can you guess the other two?
Maryland?
Nope. You're in the right area.
Delaware.
No, but that's a good guess. Kentucky and Massachusetts.
Ah, okay.
And there you have it. I don't know why this is the case, but
Fun facts.
okay. So Susan Jane Gallagher Reinert. So her birth name was Susan Jane Gallagher. We're going to learn a little bit about her. She was born on September 1st, 1942, to her dad, William Gallagher, who was a business manager at a newspaper, and her mom, Jane Hollis Fay. Fay was her maiden name, Gallagher, who was a school teacher.
Hmm, okay.
And when Susan was born, they lived in Ridgeway, Pennsylvania. So Ridgeway sits about 115 miles or 185 kilometers northeast of Pittsburgh and about 270 miles or 435 kilometers northwest of Philadelphia.
Okay.
It was challenging to find anything of substance about Susan's childhood. Known to most as Sue, she didn't go by Susan, she went by Sue, and that's going to be important because there's another Susan at play in this story. So
Okay.
Sue Reiner, we're going to call her Sue. It seems she had an average, happy, uneventful, normal upbringing. She had one sibling, a brother named Patrick Gallagher, and from the time she was a little girl, Sue's only desire was to be a school teacher just like her mom, which I find adorbs. It appears she actually quite admired her mom
Mhm.
and she really wanted to follow her path into education. So after graduating high school in 1960, Sue enrolled at a college called Grove City College, which is a very private, conservative, Christian liberal arts school, where she
Fun.
obtained her bachelor's degree in English. And from there, she went on to Pennsylvania State University and she got her master's degree in English. This was in 1966. She was at the tender age of 24. So she literally was like, nope, career oriented. I'm going to graduate from high school. I'm going to go to college to get my undergrad. Then I'm going to get my master's degree because I want to be an educator. Boom.
Damn. Good for her.
Yeah. During her time at Grove City College, Sue met the man who would become her future husband, Kenneth Wayne Reinert. Known as Ken, he was also studying at Grove City College, ultimately graduating with his bachelor's degree in psychology. Ken was born January 17th, 1943, in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. So he was a little bit younger, just a few months, but she
Oh,
got herself a little bit younger man.
damn.
Ken also served in the Air Force and he had fought in the Vietnam War.
Damn. Okay.
Back in the day, he was a radar technician and he was responsible for the radars on B 52 bombers during combat missions.
Wow.
By the time he left the Air Force, he had made captain and he had received several medals and honors during his time served. So he had a very successful military career.
Nice.
But before he left the Air Force, in 1965, Ken and Sue got married, and they were stationed all over the country while Ken served. They also lived in Puerto Rico for a time when Ken received orders to report to an air station there. And during their time in Puerto Rico, Ken actually went back to school and earned his MBA which an MBA here in the United States is a master's in business administration. So it's like a general business degree, but advanced degree. And he earned that at Puerto Rico's Inter American University. In 1967, they welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Karen. And 2 years later, they welcomed a son in 1969 that they named Michael. So
Okay.
now they're the adorable family of four. And in 1971, Ken was honorably discharged from the Air Force, thus ending his military career. And the family of four settled down in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. So that's what brought them to Pennsylvania, close to Philadelphia. Ken started work at a bank, and they settled down there because they were from that area. They had family there and things like that. By now, Sue had been working as a school teacher throughout their various moves when they were in the military, when Ken was in the military. And so she had gained a few years of experience, of working experience. And this helped her get hired that same year, 1971, by Upper Marion High School in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, as an English teacher. King of Prussia is one of my most favorite city names ever. King of Prussia is just a suburb outside of Philadelphia, but it's called the King of fucking Prussia. So
It's a
that's pretty
fancy
awesome.
tits town, let's be real.
Yeah, it's fancy. Anyway, so she was hired by Upper Marion High School and she was fucking stoked because Upper Marion was a solid high school. It was in an affluent community, it had high academic standards, it was a solid, high reputation school. From all accounts, Sue had an excellent teaching career there. She was well liked, professionally respected, and Sue had that it factor that really helps teachers. She had the innate ability to connect and bond with her students. She also chaired some clubs, some groups, notably as a co advisor for the school's yearbook. But what's really cool, Sue also taught a film class that she had personally developed and created the curriculum for just because she loved filmmaking.
Oh, that's
I know.
awesome.
According to an article in the Philadelphia Inquirer, Sue was also, quote, involved in a project to restructure high school curricula throughout the state to make them more responsive to children's needs.
Wow.
She was damn dedicated.
Right?
It's less about like she not only could she bond with like specific students in her classes and stuff, but sincerely gave a fuck about the educational experience in
Yeah,
Pennsylvania for children. Like
that's
she
amazing.
truly cared. Unfortunately, things in her personal life weren't as wonderful. After 9 years, Ken and Sue's marriage was strained. They had married young. They had two small children almost right away. That's stressful. Stresses as parents, supporting the family were challenging. In 1974, Ken and Sue ended up separating. And while their divorce was finalized on March 15th, 1976, so a couple of years later, they remained amicable and they actually were able to peacefully co-parent Karen and Michael.
Good.
So that's very good. They
Yeah.
definitely put the children first and there was very little animosity. They got along well. After the divorce, Sue joined a group called Parents Without Partners and she became quite an active member. She would like help train other members to teach them how to facilitate group meetings and she frequently organized chapter events, which makes sense because she's a teacher. So getting up
Hmm.
in front of kids, other people, talking, explaining stuff, she's used to that. She has that skill and so she was teaching that to others. And Sue would come to lean on Parents Without Partners to help her cope with the loss of her mom, Jane, when Jane and eventually passed away in 1978. So,
Hmm.
Parents Without Partners was a really important group and organization to Sue. One thing that stood out to me while I was researching this case was Sue's just absolute devotion to Karen and Michael. She fucking loved those kids. She was really invested in their well-being and their activities and she worked really really hard to give them a good life. And while she did co-parent the kiddos with Ken, they actually mostly stayed with Sue. So they primarily lived with Sue and they usually visited their dad Ken every other weekend on holidays, etc. And even with primarily living with their mom, they both had a really good relationship with their dad who was highly engaged and he was super involved in those. He like went to every single sporting event and the kids were really involved in extracurricular activities. Now, as we get further into this case, it's going to be very easy to struggle with some of the decisions Sue would eventually make.
Okay.
But Sue did not have, in my personal humble opinion, she did not have the benefit of some very crucial information that, had she known, I believe she likely may have made different decisions that would have seen her, Karen, and Michael alive and well today.
Okay.
But that didn't happen. And also, love can make someone very, very blind.
Yes.
Like Sue, not much is known of Karen and Michael. They were very young when they disappeared in June 1979. Again, Karen was 11, Michael was 10. Both had attended either Chestnut Wold Elementary School in Ardmore or Penn Wynn Elementary School in Wynwood. There are conflicting sources with this. I tend to believe they attended Chestnut Wold due to its where it was situated relative to their home in Ardmore,
Okay.
because the
Gotcha.
kids could walk. They could walk to school. It was a short walk. Karen, she had just finished sixth grade and she was preparing to enter junior high in the fall. And Michael had just finished fourth grade. And like I said, both were pretty involved in extracurricular activities. Karen participated in gymnastics and softball, and Michael was in swimming, and he had a terrific passion for baseball. Playing it, talking about it, watching it, it didn't matter. He was a huge Phillies fan. So Philadelphia Phillies is a Major League Baseball team in Philadelphia. Huge fan, Michael was. And he would often quote statistics, batting lineups, who played great, who fucking sucked in a recent game. Like, he would talk your ear off about baseball if you let him. He loved it so much. And Sue was just as invested in their sporting events as the kids were. She was constantly driving them here, there, everywhere. Like, she didn't really have much of a separate adult life, let's be real. As a single parent, since both the kiddos were so involved with stuff and they were primarily with her most of the time, she was a slave to the schedule of games, practices, scrimmages, team meetings, all that fun stuff. So, sometime in late 1978 or early 1979, so like somewhere around there, Sue and the kids eventually moved to a two-story home on Woodcrest Avenue in Ardmore. So,
Okay.
after living in an apartment for a handful of years after her divorce from Ken, Sue was able to rent this home on Woodcrest Ave after her mom, Jane, left her a pretty large inheritance after she died. Her dad, William, died back in 1971, and everything her mom left went to her and her brother, Patrick. Here's where we start to get into some shit. So, something that at first only a few people knew at the time was that at some point in the earlier part of 1974, so we're going back a few years, Sue had started an affair with a fellow Upper Marion High School English teacher by the name of William Sidney Bradfield Jr.
Oh my God. Okay. That's quite a name.
Yeah, that is quite a name. Yeah, we're going to call him Bradfield from now on. Bradfield was born in Colorado on February 11th, 1933. He moved to the Philadelphia area with his parents when he was young, and he ultimately spent the rest of his life there. He was 41 when he and Sue started dating. Sue was 32 at the time, so he was a little bit older than her. And this affair started before Sue and Ken separated in 1974. I don't
Okay.
know if it started before they were already sort of in talks about divorce and separating, and they just hadn't actually physically separated. I don't know. But by the time Sue's divorce was finalized in March 1976, that affair had become a full-fledged relationship for Sue.
Ah.
For Sue.
Okay.
At the same time, Bradfield was living with a woman by the name of Susan Myers, who was another Upper Marion High School teacher.
Oh, Jesus.
They had actually begun a relationship back in 1964, so 10 years earlier, about a year after Susan, who was 23 years old at the time, joined the faculty of Upper Marion High School.
Okay.
So by 1973, almost 10 years after they had started their relationship, they moved in together. But here's the catch. Bradfield told Susan, "Look, Susie Pooh, no one can know that we're living together, okay? Nobody really knows that we're dating. Nobody can know that we're living together. See, I'm the chair of the English department. You're just a teacher. Fraternization among faculty members is highly discouraged. And oh, by the way, remember those teacher contracts that we have that have that moral turpitude clause in there? So there's that.
Oh my
Huh.
god.
Yeah. So moral turpitude means an act or behavior that gravely violates the sentiment or accepted standard of the community. Meaning, okay, you can fuck your fellow faculty member, that's not illegal, but we're frowning on it heavily.
Mhm.
Really don't want you fucking around.
Yeah. Thank you.
It is believed that Sue Reinert, knew about Bradfield's live in girlfriend, Susan Myers, when she started seeing Bradfield, though that didn't stop Sue from telling her close friends that she had kind of let in on the affair, that she and Bradfield would be married soon. Now,
Okay.
Bradfield had been married twice before. He had been married twice before he began his relationship with his secret live in girlfriend, Susan Myers, and before he had his affair with Sue, and before everybody else he dated after he had been married. He met his first wife in college. They had two sons together. She ended up leaving the marriage when their boys were about 5 and 6 years old. His relationship with his second wife saw the birth of another son. So, all told, Bradfield had three sons. It is unclear when and how his second marriage ended, but these two failed marriages had Bradfield telling Susan Myers, his secret live in girlfriend, hey, look, Susie Poo, I'm not down with getting married again. My first two failed. I'm not interested in having another one. Oh, and also, we're not actually supposed to be seeing each other or even fucking living together. So getting married kind of blows that whole like keep it on the down low vibe. So
Right.
no marriage in the future for us. Not going to do it. Isn't a possibility. We do know that Susan Myers and Sue Reinert definitely knew about each other by 1977. So at this point, Susan Myers had been living with Bradfield for 3 years, dating him for 13 years. And Bradfield had been having an affair with Sue Reinert for about 3 years by this time. But we know Susan and Sue knew about each other by 1977 because during an incident in the Upper Marion High School faculty lounge, Susan Myers kicked Sue Reinert, like literally fucking kicked her.
Like roundhoused her? What the
I
fuck?
think just like kicked her in the shin, like latched out and kicked her in the shin and said, "You better leave Bradfield alone if you know what's good for you and your kids."
Hmm. I'm sorry. It's not funny. It's violence. But just the thought of just kicking another adult just seems very immature.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like not a slap, not a fucking hair pull, just like a boop.
It's a foreshadowing to showcase Susan Meyer's temperament and personality.
Okay.
That's about as much violence she had in her. She was pretty meek.
Okay.
But despite this little altercation, by the time Bradfield and Susan Myers ended their relationship in 1980, 3 years later, after this incident, they had been together predominantly secretly for 17 years.
Jesus.
And for icing on the cake, in the summer of 1978, okay, Bradfield and his friend, he had a real good broski by the name of Christopher Pappas. Okay. Super good buds. Pappas was a previous student Bradfield had, and he had been informally mentoring. People can't see me, but I'm air quoting. He had been informally mentoring, if you can call it that, Pappas. And Pappas was like a occasional substitute teacher at Upper Marion High School.
Okay.
And Bradfield and Pappas in the summer of 1978, they headed out to Santa Fe, New Mexico from Philadelphia. They headed out to Santa Fe, New Mexico to take some classes at a college out there to further their education and, continue to learn the ways in which you teach the art of English and such. And it was during this time that Bradfield met and started an affair with another side piece,
Jesus Christ.
a young woman named Joanna Aiken, who Pappas introduced to Bradfield. And their relationship, Bradfield and Aiken, while off and on, that relationship lasted for several years too. So at one point, Bradfield was living with and dating Susan Myers, having an affair with Sue Reiner, and having an affair with Joanna Aiken.
And was she in Santa Fe or was
Yes.
she okay, gotcha.
Yep. From my research, I don't believe Sue Reiner or Susan Myers had any idea Bradfield was seeing Joanna Aiken. I don't think they knew anything about Joanna.
So is he making trips to Santa Fe?
Yep, we're gonna learn more.
Okay.
Yeah, there's so much. It's just we're just at the we're not even at the tip of the iceberg. We're climbing up to the tip of the iceberg. It's crazy.
Okay.
I think Sue Reinert, though, I think she certainly struggled with the status of her romance with Bradfield.
Yeah, I would too.
I think she probably picked up on the fact that she liked Bradford way more than he liked her. I think she was picking up on that. And that same summer, the summer of 1978, in a conversation with her therapist, because Sue went and saw a therapist, she had been divorced, things were rough. She shared with her therapist that she still loved Bradfield. Nothing had really changed with their secret relationship 4 years on, but that she was starting to become a little more interested in dating other men. So she was kind of like, is this really what I want? Oh my God, I love him so much, but really? Okay. So now we've introduced Sue Reiner, her children, Karen and Michael, their father, Ken, Sue's boyfriend, Bradfield, and his live in girlfriend, Susan Myers, and his side piece, Joanna Aiken. We've got those people. We're going to put that thread of the story down for a moment, and we're going to pick up another thread independent of all of this. The police departments in and around the greater Philadelphia area were dealing with a string of robberies.
Okay.
In 1977, a Sears store was robbed by a man in a Brinks uniform. Here in the United States, there's like cash delivery services. Brinks is a major company that delivers cash to like banks, like to replenish the vault and things like that. So there was a guy dressed in a Brinks uniform that robbed a Sears store in 1977. And this guy absconded with more than $34,000 in cash, which in today's dollars is about $176,000, which I chuckled out loud because today, in the day of hardly anybody carries cash anymore because everything's electronic, back in that day, that wasn't the case. If you wanted to buy something, you likely had cash to do it. So a fucking Sears store in some like random city in Pennsylvania had about, in today's dollars worth, $176,000 on premise in that one cash register that this Brinks guy hit. It just
Jesus.
blows my mind. Like,
Yeah, that's crazy.
but anyway, so he absconded with 34K in cash in 1977. Later that same year, in a different Sears store location, a man dressed as a security guard attempted to rob the cashier he had approached. This cashier was like, You know what? Hey, guy, I can see that you're in a security guard uniform. This whole thing smells to me. That doesn't smell right. Let me contact my store security and just kind of see what's going on." And she was very open, and this like unnerved the man, and he just left. He took off without getting any money. He was not successful there.
Nice.
In 1978, a man wearing a cow hood,
The fuck is a cow hood?
I don't know, but he had a cow hood on. It was straight up fucking cow hood. Ooh, cow hood.
So it looked like a cow, not like
Yeah.
a hood that's intended for a cow to wear
No, no,
on a
no,
sunny day or when it's chilly or whatever. Okay.
nope, nope, nope. It was like a costume.
Well, now I'm picturing cows wearing hoodies and it's pretty cute, but whatever.
Mm. Anyway, so a man wearing a cow hood got out of a brown Ford Granada after parking next to a van outside of a pizza joint. He was holding a gun in each hand when he exited the Granada, and he started walking around the van and peering into the van's windows to see what was inside this van. Now, a young couple who noticed this were like,
The cow has guns.
the cow has guns and the cow is prowling. This whole thing is not a good situation. So they kind of
Mm-mm.
slinked away and they called the police. They found a phone because remember, there's no cell phones now. It's all about payphones. So the police responded and they started taking a statement from this young couple. And while this couple was giving their statement to the police, they saw the brown Ford Granada slowly driving through the parking lot to drive away. And they were like, "Oh my God, that's the fucking car. See that car right there? See that car? That's the goddamn car. That's the guy." And so the police were like, "Okay." So they started following the Granada and they pulled the car over. And when they do, they learned that the man's name was J. Charles Smith. And when they searched his car, they found several loaded handguns,
Okay.
a homemade silencer, bolt cutters, a mask, two syringes. They found one in the car and they found one in Smith's pocket when they patted him down. The substance that was inside these syringes was later identified as placidil or ethchlorvinol. Placidil or ethchlorvinol, it's a tranquilizer.
Ah,
It's a
great.
tranquilizer that knocks you the fuck out. Like you thought Benadryl knocked you out? Mm-mm. They also found a social security card belonging to Smith's daughter, Stephanie. And as police were searching his vehicle, Smith made a phone call and was overheard telling whoever he called to get over to his house right now before the police did and get rid of everything, especially the files.
Uh,
I love the look on your face right now. First of all, cell phones weren't a thing. So it's not like he stood there and just pulled the phone out of his pocket. So he had to have left to go to a phone, dig some change out of his pocket, make a phone call, and then spoke loud enough so that the police heard him.
Dummy.
Well, and I don't know why he wasn't detained in the back
Yeah.
of the police. I don't know. Anyway, it was fortuitous though, because naturally the police were like, what the fuck? Well, now we got to do a stakeout. Yay, a stakeout. See what the fuss is all about.
Cow, steak. Come on.
Do you see the theme here?
This is utterly ridiculous.
Oh my God, that was amazing.
No, it wasn't.
So they set up a discreet camp in a place where they could monitor the goings ons of Smith's house without being made. In the early morning hours of the next day after Smith had been arrested, police witnessed a person pull into Smith's driveway, get out of the car, go into Smith's home, and after a few moments, came back out of Smith's home carrying a couple of boxes that he put in the back of his car. He went back and forth doing this a few times, loading up his car. And finally, the police were like, okay, we should probably stop this guy. So they confront him. And the man said, hey, I'm a good friend of Smith. He called me. I'm just trying to do him a favor. He asked me to remove these boxes that were in his basement. And the police were like, we're going to take those boxes. And the guy was like, cool, 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 cool.
Take the
I'm
files. I
just
don't
going to,
fucking care.
I'm just going to leave. So when the police searched the boxes, they found a fucking treasure trove from like 3 pounds of weed
Nice.
and a stockpile of opiates, of pills,
Holy shit.
stolen school equipment from Upper Marion High School, to gallons of nitric acid, gallons, several chains and locks, a pile of gay and straight swingers magazines,
Oh.
several homemade silencers that were very similar to the homemade silencer that they had found in his car, a pile of combs that were very similar, one might say the same, as the comb found under the woman's body in the orangish reddish hatchback car in the Host Inn Motel's
Mhm.
parking lot, guns registered in the name of a guy that taught at Upper Marion High School who had recently had his wallet stolen, and he reported it to the
Oh my
police.
God.
A handful of books on bestiality.
Oh, fun.
So that's a new one.
God.
And several bottles of Valium, Librium, and Placidil. This is what
Jesus.
the police found in these boxes that this guy, who was a good friend of Smith's, was taking out of his home to do him a favor. Okay, that was a lot of shady shit.
Yeah, dude, your friend is gross.
Naturally, authorities arrested Smith and they took him into custody on charges of robbery, attempted robbery of both those Sears locations, larceny of school property, prowling with loaded handguns, and drug possession.
And impersonating a cow. I think that's a problem.
I feel like that's the greatest crime of all.
Yeah.
Police held Smith in the Chester County Farms prison, and he immediately started to try and raise bail money. His wife, who has one of the greatest names, Stefanina.
I'm sorry, what?
Stefanina. Her name was Stefanina. She, at this time, was in and out of the hospital battling stomach and liver cancer.
Hmm.
She didn't need this shit. His life was basically going to hell in a handbasket right quick. So, unsolicited, while Smith was in jail, being held on all these charges, trying to raise bail money, unsolicited, he received a letter of support from Bradfield. This letter started a correspondence between the two during the entire time Smith was detained. And
What?
it was out of this correspondence that the principal, Smith, and English teacher, Bradfield, fell into a full fledged bromance. And I personally believe this was the start of Bradfield putting his plan to groom Smith into action. Get into this much more in part two.
Okay.
They became broskies. Bradfield and Smith represented like the classic opposites attract scenario. Smith was super creepy. Like the adjective that was most commonly used by anyone to describe Smith was he was fucking creepy.
Cool.
He threw out like stodgy military vibes. He was obviously up to some shady fucking shit. Bradfield was on the outside, warm and personable and charming. Students and fellow faculty members, they really liked him. He was charismatic. People gravitated to him. Students, men, women, it didn't matter, dogs, whatever.
Cows.
He had some kind of way with the ladies. He was a snake charmer, if you will,
Mm,
especially the ladies that weren't what society would deem attractive. Bradfield would specifically target ladies that he could like smell were vulnerable or meek, or women he would deem emotionally frail. He would swoop in, he would love bomb the fuck out of them, use them up, squeeze every single last thing he could get from them, and then he would drop them.
mm.
This was Bradfield's MO. This is what he did.
What an
Basically,
asshole.
both Smith and Bradfield were just terrible people for very different reasons. They were just
Yeah.
awful, awful, awful. Okay, so who the fuck is J. Charles Smith?
Yeah.
Smith was born June 5th, 1928. And by all accounts, he had a good childhood with his four brothers and sisters in a good home provided by his parents. In 1946, he joined the Army after graduating from Chester High School and he retired from the Army Reserves. So he was in the Army, active duty, then he transitioned to Army Reserves, and he ended up retiring from the military in 1976 after 30 years of service.
Damn.
And he had achieved the rank of colonel. Like he was doing the damn thing. And
Yeah,
during his
right?
time in the army, he at one point served under President Dwight D. Eisenhower's son, John Eisenhower. For those of you not in the US, Dwight D. Eisenhower was the United States 34th president, and he was elected into office for two terms, serving from 1953 to 1961. So, kind of a big deal. By the time Smith retired from the military, he was highly decorated and he had an impressive record. Literally no issues. Sterling record. He received the Army Commendation Medal twice, the first time in 62 and again in 1974. And he had received the Navy Unit Commendation Medal in 1972 for, quote, exceptionally meritorious service.
Oh,
While he was serving in the military, he went back to school. He graduated with his bachelor's degree in education and English, obtained his master's degree in education, and then went on to earn his doctorate degree in education. So he
jeez.
was a highly educated. He was all these people in this story, very intelligent people.
Yeah.
We're talking intelligent people here. In 1966, Smith was hired as the principal of Upper Marion High School. So 10 years before he retired from the Army Reserves, so he was still serving in the reserves anyway. He was hired as the principal of Upper Marion High School, and he immediately tried to run the school with the same discipline and rigor he saw in the military.
Mm,
And unfortunately, the mostly affluent students that attended Upper Marion High School were not too pleased with this, and they
yeah.
bucked the new rules and norms. And then eventually Smith was like, fine, fuck it. You can do whatever the fuck you want. Whatever. Go right ahead. And also, Smith was an absolute fucking twat. He was a twat. He was a shock and awe kind of guy. He would say and do things for no other reason than to shock or offend.
That's pretty twatty.
Yeah. During the school day, he was MIA, missing in action. Like people couldn't find him. For hours, he'd be like, nowhere to be found. Or
Really?
for hours, he would be locked behind his office door.
What?
Yeah. And staff would say that oftentimes they would hear weird noises coming from
Uh,
his office behind his locked door, and they would oftentimes smell like weird chemical odors coming from his office. No one ever knew what the fuck was going on, but we were like, this is some weird shit. He would have inappropriate conversations with female staff and faculty that he found attractive. Basically, he would be like, "Hey, have you ever thought about getting into prostitution?
what?
You look good. You would be really successful at prostituting yourself." Like, he would say just fucking
Ew.
crazy shit. Like, yes, he was a perverted, disgusting man.
Yeah,
He was
gross.
widely known, like I said, as creepy. Like, basically, that's what people used to describe him. And shockingly, he was married to Stefanina, who happened to be his high school sweetheart. So we're talking years and years this woman has been with this guy, who Stefanina was described as being really warm and friendly and literally couldn't be more opposite of Smith. Now, they had at least one daughter. I saw all kinds of conflicting information. Some sources said they had one daughter named Stephanie. Some sources said they had two daughters, one named Stephanie and the other named Sherwin.
Not Nina? They didn't have a
Nope,
Stefan and Nina?
nope. Stephanina was mom.
Damn. That would have been cute.
Now, like I said, Stephanina was battling cancer. She would eventually succumb to it, and she died in
Mm,
August of 1979. And toward the end of her life, excuse me, their marriage started to crumble because he was getting arrested for doing all this shady fucking weird shit and having
yeah.
like books on bestiality and we'll get into rumors that were flying.
Ugh.
And as their marriage started to crumble, Stefanina, she actually moved out of the home that they shared for a while, but she ended up returning home to live with Smith after she was diagnosed with cancer, and she would remain in their home with him until her death in August of
Mm,
1979. Now we know about creepy J. Charles Smith. We've been introduced to him. So let's start the convergence of these two threads in this case. So, starting around the fall of 1978, several months before Sue's murder and the disappearance of Karen and Michael, Bradfield started making odd claims about Smith to others, especially to his live-in girlfriend Susan Myers and to two close friends, Chris Pappas, who we were introduced to just a bit ago, and another friend by the name of Vince Velitis.
okay.
One day, Bradfield randomly told Susan that Smith couldn't possibly have been the murderer. Nope, we're not talking about murder. We're talking about robbery. Get it together, Carrie. Couldn't have possibly been the robber of that one Sears store location because Smith had been with him in Ocean City, Maryland at the very same time that robbery was said to have occurred. There's just no way. He was with me in Ocean City. Another time, he told Velitis that Smith was a mafia hitman and that he was planning to kill Sue Reinert
Jesus.
because Smith and Sue were having an affair. And Smith was afraid Sue was going to out them, because the whole moral turpitude clause.
Right.
Now, this
Okay.
was the first time Bradfield planted a seed ab- to anyone about the killing of Sue Reiner. Velitis was like, dude, we need to go to the police. Like, if Smith is threatening to kill Sue Reiner, we need to go to the police, dude.
Yeah, let's stop that.
Yeah, let's go ahead and go to the police. And Bradfield was like, no way, man. We don't have any proof. And I don't know what Smith is gonna do. And I don't want him to come after me. He thinks we're friends. I want to keep him on my good side. You know how you keep your enemies closer? Yeah, dude,
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing. Just fucking be smart about it, dumbass.
Yeah. We go to Ocean City. We call it Broshen City because we're awesome friends.
Roshan is pretty good. I'm gonna give that to you. Bradfield also told Susan Myers that Smith was planning to kill Sue Reiner. He told Susan that he had no idea why Smith wanted to kill Reinert, but that they couldn't go to the police and that he really wasn't worried about it because he could keep Smith in line and convince him not to kill Sue. So he's saying one thing to one person, he's saying something else to Susan Myers.
Yeah.
Toward the end of 1978, Sue Reinert was kind of getting a little tired of how stalled her relationship with Bradfield had become. By now, they had been secretly dating for more than 4 years, and they were no closer to taking their relationship to the next level than they were when they started dating. Like, it was just the same as it was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Sue finally gave Bradfield an ultimatum. Basically, she was like, either we get serious or I'm Audi 5000. And Bradfield didn't like this. And he actually started to scramble a bit. And he was like, "Look, Sue, I love you and I want to be with you, but I can't just end things with Susan. She's fucking unstable. And I really think she could do something drastic and harmful. So, look, how about this? Give me some time to try and like hook her up with my super good buddy, Vince Velitis. If she gets into a relationship with Velitis, I can leave much more easily and then we can totes be together. Just give me a little bit more time to work that angle. And oh, by the way, I'm definitely going to move out of my house with Susan and move back in with my parents. So just hang tight." And Sue bought this rubbish of a fucking story, hook, line, and sinker.
Uh,
So Sue was not a stupid woman.
no.
There were two main reasons why she believed Bradfield at this point. One is because she desperately wanted to, because she loved him and she wanted to
Yeah.
marry him. She wanted to spend her life with him. And two, because, and this is far more important, I think Bradfield was actually that believable. He was a master liar and manipulator.
He was a charming twat.
He was a charming, charismatic twat muffin. So, shortly after this ultimatum and convo with Bradfield, Sue actually told a couple of her friends that she and Bradfield were going to get married in the summer. This would be the summer of 1979. And she told her friends that they were actually going to move to England with her kiddos and they were going to start a new life together. And Sue also shared, she was like a little concerned about Ken, the children's father, about how he would react to her taking their kids halfway across the world. So she told her friends, "Look, I am not going to tell Karen and Michael just yet. I don't want them to tell their father. I'm not telling their father. I'm just going to let everybody know after we move because then it's too late."
Wow.
Then Sue contacted an insurance company to take out a $500,000 life insurance policy on herself, naming Bradfield as the beneficiary. And his
Uh,
relationship to her was, quote, future intended husband.
okay.
And the insurance company was like, no, no, we're not going to approve your application. You're a high school English teacher making less than $35,000 a year. You don't need a $500,000 life insurance policy on yourself. That's basically like painting a target on your back.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? But for whatever reason, Sue wasn't deterred or concerned or worried or anything. And so she continued her campaign to obtain life insurance. Sue also wrote a letter to Smith because he had been, like I said, the principal of Upper Marion High School. He was the principal until 1978 when he got arrested for all of his like super shady shit. But he had worked with her and he could speak to her work ethic and her character. And she wanted Smith to write her a letter, a character reference letter, to be an exchange teacher in England for the 1979 and 1980 upcoming school year. So she's like, "Hey, Smithy Poo, could you write me a letter stating that I'm amazing so that I can use that as part of my application to be an exchange teacher in England?" And Smith agreed to do so. He's like, "Sure, no problem." And so Sue was putting like all the pieces into place to begin her life and what she thought her upcoming marriage with Bradfield. Now, concurrent with Sue's activities to begin her life with Bradfield, instead of moving out of the house he shared with Susan Myers, he instead decided to double down. And he asked Susan to enter into what he called a cohabitation agreement. He wanted Susan to sign this agreement because he was worried that Sue Reiner had made him the beneficiary on a life insurance policy. And if Smith ended up killing Sue, he might get named in a lawsuit about the insurance policy. And he really wanted to protect Susan Myers from being swept up in all of that, including any valuable assets he had, which he listed in this cohabitation agreement as a $250,000 life insurance his mother had that he was the beneficiary of, a $500,000 inheritance he was expecting to receive in the very near future, but offered no more details on that, and another $500,000 that he didn't explain, like didn't explain if it was cash, real estate, something else. He just didn't explain it. And he was telling anyone that would listed by this point that Smith was still absolutely planning to kill Sue Reiner and that he was doing everything he could to protect Sue Reiner, but that he may not be able to stop her death. He also
Okay.
added the narrative by this point. that Sue was reckless and often dated black men
Oh
and
my
was
god.
always at the bars. And if Smith didn't end up killing her, someone else probably would because Sue was careless with her safety,
Oh my god.
which is fucked up.
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
I hate that shit. I hate
Shockingly,
him.
yeah, he's evil. Shockingly, no one took anything that Bradfield said seriously, that he had been saying multiple times over several months. No one took that to the police. No one. Not
Mm.
one person took Bradfield seriously enough to try to do something about it to protect Sue Reiner.
Wow.
Even if there was just like a small thread of truth in this, no one did fucking shit. It's truly unbelievable because everything that went down was 100% avoidable.
Yeah.
During the holiday break of the winter of 1978, Bradfield started an affair with yet another woman
God damn it.
by the name of Wendy Ziegler. Because Sue Reiner, Susan Myers, and Joanna Aiken weren't enough.
Is he just the horniest motherfucker on the planet?
Wendy was a student home on break before she returned to the college she was attending in the state of California. So her parents lived in the Philly area and she returned home for the winter break, started an affair with Bradfield, who was over twice her age at this point.
Yeah. Gross.
Gross. Wendy, being she, told Pappas that Bradfield made a promise to her that he would marry her after she graduated from college.
Mm.
She also shared with Pappas that Bradfield told her that Smith was threatening to kill Sue Reiner because Sue was planning to contradict the alibi Bradfield was going to provide for Smith at his upcoming robbery trial, and that Smith didn't want Sue to interfere. So Bradfield's just fucking spinning webs everywhere. He's telling all kinds of different people that Smith was planning to kill Sue Reiner, but the reasons he was giving to these people were different. And still, I cannot stress this enough. No one went to the police. Now, even though Bradfield was telling Smith that he would be his alibi in his robbery trial, he was also at the same time working with his good old buddy Chris Pappas to unearth enough evidence to put Smith away for good. Pappas didn't really have a stake in any part of this whole convoluted situation. I think Pappas was just trying to be a good friend to Bradfield, but I think mostly Bradfield was the alpha in their friendship.
Mm.
And so I think Bradfield had a lot of power over Pappas
Yeah.
because I
Sounds
think
like it.
Pappas was just able to be manipulated. And I think he really thought Bradfield was a good friend. I think
Mm.
the same thing happened with Vince Velitis and Susan Myers and Wendy Ziegler and Joanna Inkett. And I think Bradfield was just that good of a manipulator.
Yeah. It sounds, yes. Sounds like
In
that.
January 1979, continuing the charade of getting serious, Bradfield told Sue about an amazing investment opportunity he knew about and encouraged her to give him $25,000 for him to invest on her behalf. The rate of return was an insane 12%. So she couldn't afford to not take advantage of this. And so Sue happily obliged, handing over $25,000, which in today's dollars is about $113,000.
Oh
It's a
my
lot of fucking money.
God.
Sue even told her brother Patrick about this amazing opportunity and encouraged Patrick to give Bradfield money to invest, to which Patrick was like, "Are you fucking stupid?"
Yeah. Nah.
He was like, yeah, I'm not going to give that Bradfield guy any money. And also, neither should you. And you should also stop seeing this guy. He is bad news. I don't trust him. I feel like he just takes advantage of women. Like he knew
Right.
who Bradfield was. But Pat's words of caution didn't they didn't do anything. Sue didn't
Uh,
listen. Meanwhile, Sue was still trying to continue her efforts to secure life insurance. Because she couldn't get that initial one policy for 500,000, she eventually was able to secure several policies that totaled $730,000.
Jesus
3.3 million in today's
Christ.
dollars. That's a lot of fucking money. And all of these life insurance policies named Bradfield as her sole beneficiary.
Oh my God.
She then changed her will, making Bradfield the sole beneficiary of her entire estate, even to the exclusion of her children, Karen and Michael. This is how trusting and in love with Bradfield Sue was.
Oh my god, don't you wish you could just go back and, like, shake her and be like, "So,
What are you doing?
so."
Stop. She was just simply unable to step back and see like the forest for the trees. She had
Yeah.
no idea that she had put a large target on her back. We're now in the spring of 1979. Bradfield's master manipulation charade is in full swing. His buddy Chris Pappas is still, for some unfathomable reason, helping Bradfield with the whole "let's show Smith is guilty" campaign. Allegedly, Smith gave Bradfield items that Bradfield asked Pappas to hide for Smith. See what like, there's so much detail. There's like, it's so easy to get lost in all of this stuff.
Yeah.
The items included an eyedropper that was filled with acid,
Ugh.
a 357 Magnum, and a 30 caliber rifle, and a bunch of bullets for both of these guns. These are the items that Bradfield told Pappas that Smith gave to him, and he asked Pappas to hide for Smith. Okay.
Wow.
And apparently, Bradfield had asked Pappas to file down the serial number on one of these guns. I don't know which one. I don't know what excuse he gave Pappas. And he told Pappas, he's like, look, you need to keep your fucking mouth shut because if Smith knows that you know, he'll kill your parents. And Pappas was like, fuck. By now,
Jesus.
Bradfield was telling many people, basically anyone that would listen, that he believes Sue Reinert was planning to name him in her will and on her life insurance policies, though he didn't really ever explain why, other than he thought she was trying to quote unquote trap him. But there was no explanation as to what he meant when he said that.
Mhm.
But he started telling everybody that this fucking Sue Reiner, she's going to name me in her will. She's going to make me the executor of her estate. She's going to make me the sole beneficiary on all her life insurance policies. Between her estate and her life insurance policies, we're talking like more than $1 million of value here. And he started spreading a rumor that Sue was dating someone that was super kinky and liked to incorporate literal shit into sex
Oh,
stuff.
no.
So he's spreading all this dirty, like, that she's involved in all this crazy sex stuff, and he's starting to spread out all these truth. What is with Pennsylvania teachers and poop? Like,
I don't
seriously, what is
know.
that? What is with this?
It needs to stop, you
It needs to
guys. It
stop.
needs to stop. It's
It's it's
icky.
these smear campaigns need to stop.
Oh.
Ayo. In May 1979, Smith went on trial for robbery, larceny, and drug possession.
Mm.
Smith's wife, Stefanina, testified on his behalf, telling the jury that they had been in Ocean City, Maryland that same weekend and that their daughter Stephanie and her husband Eddie were also with them. Keep this nugget in your back pocket.
Mm.
This is May 1979. Stefanina is sworn in to testify on the stand, and she says, there's no way he could have done this. He was with me in Ocean City, Maryland that weekend, and our daughter and her husband Eddie were with us.
Okay.
Put a pin in that. Bradfield also testified on behalf of Smith and told the jury that he also happened to be in Ocean City, Maryland that weekend visiting a teacher friend by the name of Fred Wattenmaker, and that he happened to run into Smith at a restaurant in Ocean City.
Oh, I'll be
Hey man, what are
damned.
you doing here? Fuck. They just so happened to be in the same city at the same time on the same weekend and had stopped at the same restaurant for lunch at the same time.
Oh,
What
man.
are the chances?
Oh,
How lucky for Smith.
right?
Because if that hadn't happened, he wouldn't have an alibi. You know what I'm saying?
Hot diggity damn, yeah.
Bradfield said that when he ran into Smith at the restaurant, they decided to leave the restaurant and visit Bradfield's teacher friend together, Mr. Wattenmaker. But when they went to Mr. Wattenmaker's house, no one was home. So they went back to the restaurant and got something to eat. And obviously, the story was fucking preposterous. And the prosecutors on cross examination were like, well, you were already at the restaurant, but
Yeah.
then you left the restaurant before eating to go to Fred Wanamaker's house, and then you go back to the restaurant to eat. Why didn't you just? And so they were poking holes in Bradfield's story, and this pissed off Bradfield, who began to lose his shit on the stand. And then he said, "Look, Wattenmaker's neighbor, his name is Rudy. Rudy saw us both there. Rudy saw us at Wanamaker's house. When Rudy took the stand, he was like, yeah, so no, that didn't happen. I never saw Bradfield or Smith, for that matter, at my neighbor Wanamaker's house. Like that never fucking happened. And also, this weekend was supposed to have occurred in late August 1977. Yeah, I didn't even meet Bradfield until sometime 1978. So
Whoa.
yeah, I don't know why he's bringing my name into it, but it's bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, the jury didn't buy any of Smith or Bradfield's or Stefanina's story either, and they ended up coming back with a guilty verdict for Smith just after 2 hours of deliberation. So they
Wow.
basically were like, let's get some pizza. Let's go to the bathroom.
Make them sweat for a hot
Yeah.
second.
Shortly after Smith's conviction, Bradfield told his friend Chris Pappas that Smith was absolutely livid with Sue Reinert for fucking him over, and that Smith was now saying he was going to beat the shit out of her before he killed her.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Sue Reiner had nothing to do with this. Like,
Right.
this had nothing to do with Sue Reiner. None of it makes any sense.
Yeah.
Now, what's very interesting is that Sue Reiner did know that Bradfield had straight up lied on the stand because
Mm.
she happened to be with Bradfield that very weekend in 1977 when the robberies went down and when Bradfield said he was supposedly in Ocean City, Maryland and had run into Smith. They were not in Ocean City, Maryland. They were together. And even with this and the insurance company information, and all this stuff, still Sue wholeheartedly believed in and trusted Bradfield.
Mm.
Like she just couldn't step back far enough to see what the fuck was going on.
Oh my
And no
God.
one went to the police or went to Sue. Nobody told Sue. No, nobody said anything.
Mm.
And this is where we're going to end part 1.
Okay. I'm not liking any of this.
Well, you're definitely not gonna like part 2.
I
And
know.
we hope
I
all
know.
of you that are listening will tune in for part 2.
Yeah, stick around.
Yeah, stick around.
Hang on
So,
for the rest of this doozy.
it's a lot of information. These are long episodes, but man, Sue Reinert's memory deserves to be kept alive as long
Yes.
as well as her children, Karen and Michael.
Mm-hmm.
They were all
Agreed.
the most of innocent victims in all of this.
Mm.
So,
Just they got wrapped up by a gang of turds.
mhm.
Ay,
So
ay,
thank you for
ay.
listening. And with that, bye, Jamie.
I'll see you soon, Carrie, because we have to do part 2. So I'll sit here and get drunk?
Yes, stop that.
Yes, please.
I'm a hot fucking mess.
Why?
I do that.
Oh my God. Okay, let's do it.
How you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
Oh, that's funny.
I know.